Late at night in a bustling alley in Atlanta, people hurriedly pass by with quick steps and sharp, impatient glances. A heated argument between two men draws annoyed looks from passers-by. Under the eyes of the crowd, one of the two men storms off in frustration. Just a few minutes later, a loud gunshot at the end of the street shatters the lively atmosphere, throwing the scene into chaos. People begin to flee as a man lies motionless on the brick pavement, having been shot. The assailant has slipped into the crowd and completely disappeared. The victim is none other than one of the two men who had the intense argument just moments earlier. A call is made to the city police headquarters in panic by a street vendor. Detective John Turner, a seasoned investigator with extensive experience in drug-related homicides, and Detective Lisa Moreno, a newer investigator with a background in narcotics, are immediately notified and quickly arrive at the scene. It's no coincidence they called us. Both officers understand that the shooting is a highly serious matter. Beyond the fact that a man was killed, the biggest concern is the location, a notorious alleyway for drug trade, frequented by the most cunning and dangerous figures. Given the setting, there's a strong possibility this crime is linked to illicit drug activity. The perpetrator brazenly committed the act in a crowded place without regard for consequences but vanished without a trace. The scene is secured and an ambulance arrives, though the man has already died. His lifeless body rests against a graffiti-covered wall. The alley, once bustling, now feels eerily quiet. The police presence has effectively halted all activity, with people avoiding the scene to avoid questioning. At the scene, the police find shell casings from the gunshots. There were 3 shots, all hitting the victim at close range. The shooter was likely standing right beside him at the moment of the crime. A search of the victim's body reveals identification and a small packet of white powder suspected to be drugs hidden in his coat pocket. Traces of the same white powder are also scattered at the scene. All substances are later confirmed to be synthetic drugs. This may have been a conflict during a drug transaction. The victim was identified as Justin J. Rock Carter, a 22-year-old local who owned a small business on the street. Detectives Turner and Moreno assessed the crime scene, documenting evidence, including bullet casings and the stash of drugs found. Since there were no security cameras in the alley, witness testimonies from those present at the scene became essential. Officers began questioning people, but most reported they hadn't seen anything and had only heard the gunshots. A vendor near where the victim fell shared his account. The street was crowded before the gunshots. I couldn't even see the people across the way. Then I heard shots. People panicked, and everyone scattered. That's when I saw the man lying there. Another vendor farther away provided additional details about the suspect. I didn't see the shooting itself, but I saw him having a heated argument with another man here beforehand. The argument was loud, and it drew attention. The other man walked off before him in the opposite direction. A moment later, I heard the shots. It wasn't until the crowd cleared that I realized it was him. However, this witness couldn't identify the person who had argued with Justin. Following this lead, police interviewed more people in the area and eventually identified the suspect. One witness agreed to testify after police guaranteed confidentiality. I know him, it's Ace. He's a dealer in the city, selling small stuff. People around here know him but wouldn't dare talk about it. He's hot-tempered and not a good guy. We buy from him because it's cheap, but I don't like him. He only treats rich folks well. With further assurances of anonymity, other witnesses provided insights into Justin and Ace's dispute. Reportedly, the conflict was financial. Justin owed Ace a substantial debt he hadn't been able to repay, and had even challenged him. They were also arguing over crack, an illegal stimulant derived from coca, or in other words, a prohibited addictive drug. It's likely the two men had a drug deal with each other, so finding Ace quickly became a priority. Based on the information provided by witnesses and other personal details from the police, the detectives traced his location. Ace had a prior record for violent offenses and was suspected of involvement in an organized drug trafficking network. Justin was also part of this network, though he may have wanted to leave it, angering Ace and putting himself in danger. The police immediately headed to Ace's shop at an address given by witnesses who had done business with him. When they arrived, they found Lisa, Ace's wife, who appeared tired and extremely busy. Lisa primarily managed the store, handling all the sales, while Ace barely involved himself. "He's useless. Sometimes he'll help me with deliveries if I yell at him to, but I can't keep supporting him when he just leaves. Don't ask me about him. I don't want anything to do with that selfish, worthless man." After some convincing, Lisa agreed to spare a few moments to share information. Ace had been away from home for a while, living his own life without contact with his family. However, she had heard that he frequently showed up at an abandoned warehouse on the west side of the city. From Ace's home, the police obtained a photo of him and began their search following the lead from his wife. Detective Turner noted Lisa's parting words as they left.
Lisa accepted
"He's
the
armed and
punishment
dangerous.
for her
Be careful with
actions,
him.
but the
But if you
mother
do catch
passed
him and
away
he's not
soon
guilty,
after.
please tell him to visit
Ace
his
was
mother.
taken
She's
back
been
to the
severely ill since
precinct.
he left,
Though
and she
he
may not make it
maintained
much
his
longer."
cold demeanor,
The police arrived
his
in the
mother's
area of the
death
abandoned
and
warehouse on
Lisa's
the city's west
actions
side, as
appeared
Lisa
to
had
prompt him
described.
to reflect on
Local
his
officers
life,
scouted the neighborhood,
one that
but
could have
residents
been
were wary of
far
mentioning Ace,
happier.
clearly intimidated by his reputation. "He definitely has a strong presence here, intimidating those around him," one officer observed. The warehouse was likely a hideout for Ace's drug-dealing gang. The investigative team members took up positions around the building and maintained constant communication to report updates. The operation to apprehend Ace would commence the moment he appeared. The long wait finally paid off. Ace arrived with his associates for a small drug deal with several individuals. Shortly after, everyone involved in the transaction was quietly apprehended. The police raid caught them off guard, giving them no time to react. They scattered, throwing away anything they could to escape. However, they were all captured, including Ace, and taken to police headquarters for questioning. Surprisingly, Ace's associates took responsibility for all drug dealing and possession charges, while he sat calmly across from the detectives in the interrogation room, showing no fear or concern. "He's clever. He might have worn gloves while handling the drugs, so none of the evidence at the scene has his fingerprints. He didn't directly participate in the transaction, but let his associates handle everything, watching discreetly from another spot in the warehouse. I was just passing by and went inside out of curiosity. You can't arrest me for being curious," Ace said, looking directly at the two detectives with a challenging tone. He maintained his attitude until the detectives questioned him about Justin's death. Ace had no alibi, as many witnesses had seen him there, and he knew it. He began to speak more cooperatively, though his eyes still held a deceptive glint. "Yes, I went to the street and met with Justin. We did argue because he owed me money and hadn't paid it back for a long time. I just wanted my money. And when he refused, you killed him? Don't accuse me based on personal assumptions, officer." After further questioning about his fingerprints potentially being on the crack bag found in Justin's pocket, Ace's attitude softened. He mentioned another dealer, T-Bone, who, according to him, had issues with Justin. While he temporarily diverted suspicion for Justin's death onto someone else, Ace wouldn't escape charges for drug trafficking, which darkened his expression. Following Ace's lead, the police began investigating T-Bone. Ace claimed there was a dispute between the two and that T-Bone had been present at the crime scene, witnessing the argument between Ace and the victim before Justin stormed off. The police went to T-Bone's residence, but as soon as they knocked, an officer noticed someone climbing over the back railing, trying to flee. "The suspect is escaping. Surround him immediately." T-Bone stole a neighbor's car and sped off down the road. Patrol units were immediately alerted and set out to pursue him. The car is heading straight down the highway toward the western outskirts of the city. Block him before he leaves the highway. A special task force moved into position, tracking the vehicle closely via traffic cameras along the route. When he reached the highway intersection, he was completely cut off. T-Bone opened the car door and tried to flee on foot, but he was quickly subdued, handcuffed, and escorted back to the station. In the interrogation room, T-Bone faced the officers with visible anxiety and fear. A search of his home had uncovered a large quantity of methamphetamine and crack cocaine scattered on the table, as well as various other drugs hidden in his backpack. Faced with the evidence, T-Bone gradually lost composure and began to admit to his drug-dealing activities. When asked about Justin's death, T-Bone grew quiet and inquired about the severity of his sentence if he confessed and cooperated, which raised police suspicions. It's like he's weighing whether to admit guilt with a calculated and nervous expression, unusual for a real perpetrator of the crime. "So you're confessing?" one officer asked. "No, I just want to know what would happen if I did," he replied. "A murder charge. How light do you think that would be?" T-Bone looked blank, a hint of disappointment flashing in his eyes as he seemed resigned. He began to share what he knew about the night of the incident. "I was on that street and did see Ace and Justin arguing. I overheard them talking about mounting debt and things were getting tense. Knowing Ace's temper, I left when they started shouting. Not long after, I heard gunshots. I don't know who killed him. At the time, I had gone to a nearby cafe. You can check the cameras there." Not long after, T-Bone's alibi was confirmed as accurate. The evidence cleared him, and suspicion again centered on the one person who had a serious dispute with the victim before his death, Ace. At that moment, Detectives Turner and Moreno received shocking news. Ace had escaped. He had faked a drug-related seizure to be taken to the hospital, where he had assistance in escaping. Hospital cameras showed a woman helping him into a delivery van in the basement before they drove off. The detectives quickly recognized the vehicle. It belonged to Lisa, Ace's wife. They immediately headed to her home, knowing she likely wouldn't abandon Ace's bedridden mother, who needed constant care. Lisa was an orphan, raised by Ace's mother. After his parents separated, Ace lived with his father, but he later married Lisa and moved in with his mother. The police surrounded the house and moved inside, finding Lisa waiting at the door, ready to cooperate without resistance. She had done everything just so Ace could say his last goodbye to his mother. "I know he committed a crime, but my mother-in-law couldn't visit him." Lisa accepted the punishment for her actions, but the mother passed away soon after. Ace was taken back to the precinct. Though he maintained his cold demeanor, his mother's death and Lisa's actions appeared to prompt him to reflect on his life, one that could have been far happier. Following T-Bone's statement and the address he provided, police located Ace's hideout in the west part of the city, where they found the gun believed to be the murder weapon, as well as a blood-stained shirt he wore on the night of the incident. Ace was devastated upon hearing of T-Bone's betrayal. They had an agreement. Anyone who took the fall for Ace would later receive generous rewards, possibly even territorial freedom to conduct business within the city. However, the weight of the crime and the punishment it entailed had ultimately frightened T-Bone into revealing the truth. Ace sat in jail awaiting his trial after his mother's passing, with any chance of a bright future or a happy family now completely behind him. His choices had led him down a path of crime, like a bottomless pit with no chance of starting over. On the day of sentencing, only local townspeople who once feared and despised him came, some even mocking him. Ace walked through the dark doors of a cell that would hold him for life. The price he paid for allowing his morals to degrade and indulging in excessive personal desires was far too high.